The crack of gunfire echoed through the dusty streets of Silver Creek as Abigail Reynolds clutched her 5-year-old son Samuel to her chest and ran. The year was 1875, and the promise of a new life in the West had turned to ash in her mouth like the dust that swirled around her fleeing form. "Mama, I'm scared," Samuel whimpered, his small arms wrapped tight around her neck as she stumbled down the back alley behind the general store. "Hush now, my love," Abigail whispered, her heart pounding in her chest. "We'll be safe soon." The lie tasted bitter on her tongue. Where could they go? Her husband Thomas had been dead for 3 months now, killed by the same gang that was hunting her down. The Blackwell Gang wanted the deed to their small claim outside of town, the one Thomas had died protecting. They thought she still had it hidden somewhere, and they weren't going to stop until they got what they wanted. Abigail's legs gave out as she reached the edge of town. The dusty main road stretched ahead, winding its way toward the distant mountains. She had no horse, no water, no supplies. Just the clothes on their backs and the locket around her neck containing the only picture of Thomas she had left. "Mama, I can't run anymore," Samuel said, his voice small and tired. "I know, sweetheart," she murmured, stroking his dark hair. "We'll rest for a minute." She settled against a large rock, cradling her son in her arms as the merciless sun beat down on them. They were exposed here, but she couldn't carry him any further. Not yet. Her muscles screamed with exhaustion, her throat parched with thirst. Samuel's eyes fluttered closed, exhaustion claiming him despite the danger. His small body went limp in her arms, his breathing evening out into the steady rhythm of sleep. Abigail held him close, tears streaking through the dust on her face. She had failed him, failed Thomas, failed the dream they had built together. The sound of hoofbeats in the distance made her blood run cold. They were coming. Abigail tried to stand, to keep running, but her legs refused to respond. She eased Samuel down beside her in the dust, hoping beyond hope that whoever was approaching would pass them by. But the hoofbeats slowed, and a shadow fell across them. Abigail looked up, squinting against the sunlight, expecting to see one of Blackwell's men leering down at her. Instead, she saw a tall figure atop a magnificent chestnut stallion, the sun behind him casting his face in shadow. "Madam, you all right?" The voice was deep, concerned. "Please," Abigail whispered, her voice cracking. "Help us." The stranger dismounted in one fluid motion, and as he approached, she could finally see his face. He was younger than she'd expected, perhaps 30, with a strong jaw shadowed with stubble and eyes the color of the sky after a storm. He wore a weathered Stetson, dusty trail clothes, and a gun belt that had clearly seen use. "Name's Wade Xander," he said, crouching down beside them. "Looks like you and the little one are in a spot of trouble." "They're after us," Abigail said, glancing fearfully back toward town. "The Blackwell Gang." Something dark flashed across Wade's face. "Blackwell, you say?" He stood, scanning the horizon with narrowed eyes. "We need to move. Now." He reached down, gently lifting the still sleeping Samuel in one arm. Then, with surprising strength, he helped Abigail to her feet with the other. "Can you ride?" he asked. Abigail nodded, though she wasn't sure her trembling legs would support her. Wade guided her to his horse, lifting Samuel up first before helping her into the saddle. Then he swung up behind them, one arm secure around her waist to keep her from falling. "Hold on," he murmured, his breath warm against her ear. The horse took off at a canter, dust billowing behind them as they left Silver Creek behind. Abigail clutched Samuel to her chest with one hand, the other gripping the saddle horn as they rode toward the distant mountains. "I'm Abigail," she said after they'd ridden in silence for nearly an hour. "Abigail Reynolds. This is my son, Samuel." "Where you headed, Mrs. Reynolds?" Wade asked, his voice rumbling against her back. I don't know," she admitted. "Somewhere they won't find us." Wade was quiet for a moment. "I've got a cabin. Up in the foothills. Not much, but it's hidden. Safe. You'd be welcome there until we figure something out." Abigail stiffened. Trust didn't come easy these days, not after everything that had happened. "Why would you help us? You don't even know us." "Let's just say I've got my own reasons for wanting to cross Jack Blackwell," Wade replied, his tone hardening. "Besides, I wasn't raised to leave a woman and child stranded in the desert." Samuel stirred in her arms, his eyes fluttering open. He tensed immediately, looking around in confusion and fear until his gaze settled on Wade. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice small but defiant. "Name's Wade, partner," the cowboy replied with a gentle smile. "Your ma and I thought it best to get you someplace safe." Samuel studied him solemnly before apparently deciding Wade passed muster. "Do you have a gun?" he asked. "The bad men have guns." "I do," Wade confirmed. "But I only use it when I have to." "My pa had a gun," Samuel said. "But the bad men shot him anyway." Abigail felt Wade tense behind her. "I'm sorry to hear that," he said quietly. "Your pa must have been a brave man." "The bravest," Samuel agreed, his small chin lifting with pride despite the shadows in his eyes. They rode in silence after that, the rhythm of the horses' hooves lulling Samuel back to sleep. Abigail found herself leaning back against Wade's chest, her own exhaustion catching up with her. "Rest," Wade murmured. "I'll keep you safe." Against her better judgment, Abigail closed her eyes, surrendering to the gentle sway of the horse and the solid warmth of the stranger behind her. When she woke, the sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. They were climbing now, the desert giving way to scrubby pine trees and rocky outcroppings. Samuel was awake, chattering excitedly to Wade about a hawk circling overhead. "We're nearly there," Wade said when he noticed her stirring. "How are you feeling?" "Better," she admitted, though her body ached from the long ride. "Thank you, Mr. Xander." "Wade," he corrected. "Mr. Xander was my father, and he was a mean old cuss who wouldn't have stopped for you on the road." Something in his tone made Abigail curious, but she didn't press. Everyone in the West had stories they didn't share. Heaven knew she had her own. As the last light faded from the sky, they crested a ridge, and Wade's cabin came into view. It was small but solidly built, nestled in a clearing surrounded by pines. A corral stood off to one side, currently empty, and a small stream bubbled nearby. "It's not much," Wade said, almost apologetically. "But it's home. It's perfect," Abigail replied honestly. After months of uncertainty and fear, the sight of the sturdy cabin felt like a miracle. Wade helped them dismount, supporting Abigail when her legs threatened to give way beneath her. Samuel, seemingly recovered from their ordeal, immediately darted toward the stream, fascination written across his small face. "Samuel, stay close," Abigail called, anxiety spiking through her exhaustion. "It's safe here," Wade assured her, leading his horse toward the small stable. "No one comes this way, not even Blackwell's men." Inside, the cabin was simple but clean. A stone fireplace dominated one wall, with a rough-hewn table and chairs nearby. A curtain separated what Abigail assumed was Wade's sleeping area from the main room. Shelves lined the walls, holding books, supplies, and a few personal items. "You two can take the bed," Wade said, gesturing to the curtained area. "I'll bunk out here." "We couldn't possibly," Abigail began. "I insist," Wade cut her off with a gentle smile. "You both need proper rest." He lit a lamp, then set about starting a fire in the hearth while Abigail helped Samuel wash up using water from a bucket by the door. The domesticity of the scene struck her suddenly, bringing tears to her eyes. How long had it been since they'd felt safe enough for such simple routines? "Are you hungry?" Wade asked, hanging a pot over the now crackling fire. "I've got some stew I can heat up." Samuel's stomach growled in response, drawing a laugh from Wade. The sound transformed his face, softening the hard edges and making him look younger, more approachable. "I'll take that as a yes," he said, winking at Samuel, who giggled in response. They ate at the table, the stew simple but filling. Samuel peppered Wade with questions between bites about his horse, his gun, the mountains, and everything in between. Wade answered each one patiently, his eyes crinkling at the corners when he smiled. "Why do you live all the way up here by yourself?" Samuel asked finally, scraping the last bite from his bowl. A shadow crossed Wade's face. "Sometimes a man needs quiet to think." "About what?" Samuel pressed, undeterred. "Samuel," Abigail chided gently. "That's enough questions for tonight." "It's all right," Wade said, though his smile didn't quite reach his eyes anymore. "I came up here after the war, Samuel. Needed some peace." "Which side did you fight for?" Abigail asked before she could stop herself. "Union," Wade replied. "Though out here, that doesn't mean much anymore. War's been over for 10 years, but some men bring it with them wherever they go." He stood abruptly, gathering their empty bowls. You both must be tired. I'll get some water for washing up. Later, after Samuel had fallen asleep in the narrow bed behind the curtain, Abigail returned to the main room. Wade sat by the fire, cleaning a rifle with practiced movements. I don't know how to thank you, she said, sitting in the chair across from him. Wade shook his head. No need for thanks. There is, she insisted. You could have ridden past us. Most would have. He was quiet for a long moment, his hands never stopping their methodical work. What's your story, Mrs. Reynolds? What brought you and the boy to be running from Jack Blackwell? Abigail sighed, the weight of the past pressing down on her. My husband Thomas and I came west 3 years ago. We had a small claim outside Silver Creek. Nothing fancy, but the land was good. We were building something there. She twisted the simple gold band she still wore. 3 months ago, Blackwell decided he wanted our land. Said there was silver on it. Was there? Wade asked, looking up from his work. No. Abigail replied with a bitter laugh. At least, we never found any. But Blackwell didn't care. He offered to buy us out for a pittance. When Thomas refused. Her voice caught. They shot him, right in front of Samuel and me. Said if I knew what was good for me, I'd sign the deed over. But you didn't. No, I couldn't. That land was everything Thomas had worked for. Everything we had built together. I hid the deed where they couldn't find it. She met Wade's gaze steadily. They've been coming around, threatening us. Today, they said their patience had run out. If I didn't hand over the deed by sundown, they'd. She couldn't finish the sentence, looking toward the curtain behind which her son slept. Wade's jaw tightened, his eyes hardening to chips of blue ice. Blackwell's been pushing folks around these parts for too long. The law won't touch him because he owns half the county. You said you had your own reasons for crossing him. Abigail prompted carefully. Wade was silent for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Finally, he set the rifle aside. He killed my brother. 2 years ago. Accused him of cheating at cards. His voice was flat, but Abigail could hear the pain beneath it. Matt was just passing through. Wasn't even much of a gambler. But Blackwell had been drinking, and when he loses, he gets mean. I'm sorry, Abigail whispered. Been tracking him since, Wade continued. Waiting for the right moment. He's careful, always surrounded by his men. And he's got the sheriff in his pocket. Is that why you live up here? To be close enough to watch him? Wade nodded. Figured someday he'd slip up. Give me an opening. He glanced toward the curtain. Never expected it to involve a woman and child, though. We're not your responsibility, Abigail said, though the thought of facing Blackwell again made her blood run cold. Maybe not, Wade agreed. But I'm making you my responsibility now. He leaned forward, his gaze intense. We're going to figure this out, Mrs. Reynolds. Together. Abigail, she corrected softly. If I'm calling you Wade, you should call me Abigail. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Abigail, he repeated, the name sounding different in his deep voice. Get some rest. We're safe for now. She nodded, rising from her chair. At the curtain, she paused, looking back at him. Thank you, Wade. For everything. He nodded once, his eyes reflecting the firelight. Good night, Abigail. Morning brought the smell of coffee and the sound of Samuel's excited chatter. Abigail emerged from behind the curtain to find her son perched on a stool beside Wade at the cook stove, solemnly stirring something in a bowl. Morning, Mama. Samuel called. We're making flapjacks. Wade says I'm the best stirrer he's ever seen. Is that so? Abigail smiled, her heart warming at the scene. Wade looked up, a hint of color touching his cheeks as he nodded a greeting. The boy's a natural, he said, ruffling Samuel's hair. Could use a ranch hand like him someday. Do you have a ranch? Samuel asked, eyes wide. Wade shook his head. Not yet. But someday, maybe. Can we live there too? When you get it. Samuel asked with a child's directness. Samuel. Abigail admonished, embarrassment flooding her. I'm sorry, she said to Wade. He doesn't understand, no need to apologize. Wade cut in, his smile gentle. And sure, partner, he said to Samuel. There'd always be a place for you at my ranch. The simple kindness in his voice made Abigail's throat tighten. She busied herself setting the table while Wade and Samuel finished the flapjacks, listening to their easy conversation with a mixture of gratitude and melancholy. Samuel hadn't been this animated since before Thomas died. He needed a man in his life, someone to look up to teach him the things a father should. But they couldn't stay here. Blackwell wouldn't stop looking for them, and she wouldn't put Wade in danger by remaining. No matter how safe the cabin felt, or how naturally Wade had slipped into their lives. After breakfast, Wade took Samuel outside to see the horses while Abigail cleaned up. Through the window, she watched them, her heart clenching at the sight of Samuel's small hand trustingly in Wade's much larger one. They stopped by the corral, where Wade lifted Samuel onto the fence so he could better see the chestnut stallion. "That's Rusty," Wade was saying as Abigail stepped outside to join them. "Best horse a man could ask for. Never spooked, never quit." "He's so big," Samuel said with awe. "Does he bite?" "Not if you treat him right," Wade replied. "Horses are like people that way. Treat him with kindness and respect, they'll return it." "Can I pet him?" Samuel asked. Wade glanced at Abigail, silently asking permission. She nodded, and Wade lifted Samuel from the fence, carrying him into the corral. "Nice and easy now," he instructed, guiding Samuel's small hand to the horse's neck. "Let him get your scent first." Samuel giggled as the horse nudged his hand curiously. "He likes me." "Course he does," Wade said. "You've got a good heart." Horses can tell. Watching them together, something shifted inside Abigail. There was an ease to Wade's manner with Samuel, a natural kindness that couldn't be faked. Whatever hardships had driven him to this solitary existence in the mountains, they hadn't diminished his capacity for gentleness. Later, while Samuel napped, exhausted from the excitement of the morning, Abigail and Wade sat on the cabin's small porch, mugs of coffee warming their hands against the crisp mountain air. "We need to talk about what happens next," Abigail said, breaking the comfortable silence between them. Wade nodded, his expression serious. "You've got family somewhere you can go to?" "No," she admitted. "Thomas and I, we were on our own. His parents died before we married, and mine disowned me when I chose him." The old pain surfaced briefly before she pushed it aside. "I have a friend in Denver who might take us in, but what?" Abigail sighed. "Blackwell has a long reach. And I'm tired of running, Wade. Tired of being afraid." Wade studied her face, his eyes thoughtful. "What are you suggesting?" "I don't know," she confessed. "But I can't keep living like this. Samuel deserves better." "Yes, he does," Wade agreed quietly. "You both do." He was silent for a long moment, seemingly wrestling with a decision. Finally, he set his mug aside. "I have a proposition for you." "I'm listening," Abigail said, curious. "I've been watching Blackwell for 2 years now, looking for a way to bring him down. But I can't get close enough." He leaned forward, his expression intense. "You have something he wants badly enough that he's willing to kill for it." "The deed," Abigail said, understanding dawning. "You want to use it as bait." Wade nodded. "If we do this right, we could end his reign for good. Not just for us, but for everyone he's hurt." "It's dangerous," Abigail said, though she couldn't deny the appeal of finally being free of Blackwell's shadow. "Yes," Wade acknowledged. "But I'll be with you every step of the way. I won't let anything happen to you or Samuel." Abigail studied his face, searching for any sign of deception or uncertainty. She found none, just determination and something else, something that made her heart beat a little faster. "We need a plan," she said finally. "A good one." A slow smile spread across Wade's face, transforming his serious features. "I've got a few ideas," he said. They spent the afternoon planning, heads bent close together at the rough-hewn table. Wade had been tracking Blackwell's movements for months and knew his habits, his weaknesses. "He gets careless when he drinks," Wade explained. "And he always drinks at Molly's saloon on Saturday nights." "Tomorrow," Abigail murmured. Wade nodded. "We need to move fast. Get word to him that you're willing to negotiate about the deed." "He won't believe it," Abigail argued. "Not after I ran." "He will if he thinks you're desperate," Wade countered. "And if you have something else he wants." Abigail raised an eyebrow. "Like what?" "Me," Wade said simply. "He's wanted me dead almost as long as I've wanted the same for him. If he thinks you're trading me for your freedom, he'll bite." "No," Abigail said immediately, the thought of using Wade as bait making her stomach turn. "It's too dangerous." "It's the best chance we've got," Wade insisted. "I know what I'm doing, Abigail. I've been waiting for this opportunity for 2 years." "And what about Samuel?" she asked. "I can't risk leaving him without a mother." Wade's expression softened. "We'll leave him with my friend, Joseph. He runs the trading post about 5 miles from here. He and his wife will keep Samuel safe until we return. And if we don't return? The question hung between them, heavy with implications. Wade reached across the table, taking her hand in his. His palm was rough with calluses, but his touch was gentle. We will, he promised. But if something happens to me, Joseph will make sure you and Samuel get safely to Denver. I've already made arrangements. The realization that Wade had been planning for every contingency, even his own death, struck Abigail forcefully. You've thought of everything. Had a lot of time to think up here, he said with a wry smile. But the choice is yours, Abigail. We can try to end this now, or you can take Samuel and head for Denver. Either way, I'll help you. Abigail looked down at their joined hands, then back up to Wade's face. In just 2 days, this man had become someone she trusted with her life, with her son's life. The thought of leaving, of never seeing him again, created an unexpected ache in her chest. Let's end it, she said firmly. For Thomas. For your brother. For Samuel's future. Wade squeezed her hand, his eyes reflecting a complicated mix of emotions. Together, then. The next morning, after explaining to Samuel that he would be spending the day with new friends while Mama and Wade took care of important business, they rode to Joseph's trading post. Joseph turned out to be a grizzled older man with kind eyes who greeted Wade like a brother. About time you brought some company up to that lonely cabin of yours, he said, winking at Abigail. It's not like that, Joseph, Wade said, though his ears reddened slightly. Mrs. Reynolds and her boy need help. Joseph's expression sobered as Wade explained the situation. Blackwell, he spat. That man's a plague on this country. Joseph's wife, Martha, a plump, motherly woman with silver-streaked hair, immediately took Samuel under her wing, showing him their collection of wooden toys carved for their grandchildren's visits. He'll be safe with us, she assured Abigail. As if he were our own. Saying goodbye to Samuel was harder than Abigail had expected. He clung to her neck, his small face serious. You'll come back, right, Mama? He whispered. You and Wade. Of course we will, sweetheart, she promised, praying it wasn't a lie. We just have to take care of some grown-up business in town. Is it about the bad men? Samuel asked perceptively. Abigail hesitated, unwilling to lie but not wanting to frighten him. Wade crouched down beside them, his hand gentle on Samuel's shoulder. It is, partner, he said honestly. But don't you worry. I'm going to make sure those bad men can't ever scare you or your ma again. Samuel studied Wade's face solemnly, then nodded. Promise, promise, Wade said, his voice firm. Man to man. Somehow, that reassured Samuel where all Abigail's attempts had failed. He hugged Wade fiercely, then allowed Martha to lead him away to see the chickens in the yard. He trusts you, Abigail said as they mounted up to leave. Smart kid, Wade replied with a small smile. Knows I'd die before I let anything happen to either of you. The simple declaration, spoken so matter-of-factly, made Abigail's breath catch. She had no response, so she simply nodded, blinking back unexpected tears as they rode towards Silver Creek. The plan was straightforward but risky. Wade would remain hidden outside town while Abigail made contact with one of Blackwell's men, offering a deal the deed and Wade's whereabouts in exchange for her and Samuel's freedom. The meeting would be set for Molly's saloon that night, when Blackwell would already be drinking and potentially careless. Meanwhile, Wade had sent Joseph to fetch the county marshal, a man Wade knew from his army days who had been looking for a reason to bring Blackwell down for years. If everything went according to plan, the marshal would arrive just as Blackwell incriminated himself. And if the marshal doesn't make it in time? Abigail had asked. Then I handle Blackwell myself, Wade had replied, his expression leaving no doubt as to what he meant. Now, as they approached Silver Creek, Abigail's stomach knotted with anxiety. So much could go wrong. Blackwell could see through their ruse. The marshal might not arrive in time. Wade could be killed trying to protect her. It'll work, Wade said, as if reading her thoughts. Just remember what we practiced. They stopped in a stand of trees about a mile outside town. Wade helped Abigail down from the horse, his hands lingering at her waist a moment longer than necessary. Be careful, he said, his voice rough with emotion. If anything feels wrong, anything at all, you get out of there. Don't worry about the plan, or me, or anything else. Just get yourself safe. Abigail looked up at him, struck again by how much this man had come to mean to her in such a short time. Without thinking, she reached up, her hand cupping his stubbled cheek. "You be careful too," she whispered. "Samuel isn't the only one who needs you to come back." Something flashed in Wade's eyes, surprise, then a warmth that made Abigail's heart race. For a breathless moment, she thought he might kiss her. Instead, he covered her hand with his own, turning his face to press a gentle kiss to her palm. "I'll find you," he promised, "no matter what happens." With that, he helped her back onto Rusty. "He knows the way back if you need him," Wade said, patting the horse's neck. "Just give him his head." Abigail nodded, gathering the reins. "I'll see you tonight," she said, trying to sound more confident than she felt. Wade stepped back, his expression grave. "Tonight," he agreed. Silver Creek looked much the same as when she'd fled it just 2 days earlier, though it felt like a lifetime had passed. Abigail rode slowly down the main street, her heart pounding as she passed familiar storefronts. A few people recognized her, their expressions ranging from surprise to concern. She kept her chin high, refusing to show fear. She found one of Blackwell's men, a weaselly character named Harkins, lounging outside the general store. His eyes widened when he saw her. Well, he drawled. "Look who came crawling back. Boss figured you'd either show up or turn up dead eventually." "I need to speak with Mr. Blackwell," Abigail said, keeping her voice steady. "I have a proposition for him." Harkins laughed. "A proposition? Lady, you're in no position to be making deals." "Tell him I know where Wade Xander is," Abigail said quietly, "and I'm ready to talk about the deed. Tonight at Molly's. 8 o'clock. That wiped the smirk from Harkins' face. "Xander? The bounty hunter?" Abigail nodded, though this was the first she'd heard of Wade being a bounty hunter. It explained his tracking skills, at least. "I'll tell him," Harkins said, suddenly wary. "But you'd better not be playing games, Mrs. Reynolds. Boss doesn't like being made a fool of." "No games," Abigail assured him. "Just a woman looking to keep her son safe." With that, she turned Rusty and rode back out of town, feeling Harkins' eyes boring into her back the whole way. The first part of their plan was in motion. Now all they could do was wait. She met Wade at a small creek where they'd agreed to rendezvous, relief flooding her at the sight of him waiting safely among the trees. "Harkins will deliver the message," she said as she dismounted. "But he called you a bounty hunter. You didn't mention that." Wade's expression tightened. "Used to be," he admitted. "After the war, for a while. Wasn't proud of it." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Seemed like a way to use what I was good at tracking, shooting. But it changed me, and not for the better. Quit after Matt died." "Is that how you knew Blackwell?" Abigail asked. "From your bounty hunting days?" Wade nodded. "Brought in one of his men once. Blackwell never forgot it." He looked at her carefully. "Does it change things, knowing that about me?" Abigail considered the question. A bounty hunter was just a step above an outlaw in many people's estimation. But she'd seen the gentleness in Wade, the honor. The way he treated Samuel, the risks he was taking to help them. "No," she said finally. "We've all done things we're not proud of, Wade. It's who you are now that matters." Relief flickered across his face, and he nodded once, grateful for her understanding. They spent the hours until nightfall making final preparations. Wade checked his weapons repeatedly, the movements automatic after years of practice. Abigail changed into the clean dress Martha had lent her, trying to look respectable but not too well off. "The deed," Wade said suddenly. "Where is it really?" Abigail smiled wryly. "Sewn into Samuel's stuffed rabbit, the one he never lets out of his sight. Blackwell's men tore our cabin apart looking for it, but they never thought to check a child's toy." Wade chuckled, genuine admiration in his eyes. "You're something else, Abigail Reynolds." "I'm just a mother protecting her son," she replied, though his praise warmed her. "It's more than that," Wade said seriously. "Most women would have broken under the pressure, signed over the deed, taken whatever pittance Blackwell offered. But you stood your ground." "I couldn't let Thomas down," she said softly. "He loved that land, believed in what we were building there." Wade was quiet for a moment, his expression unreadable. "You loved him very much," he said finally. It wasn't quite a question. "Yes," Abigail acknowledged. "He was a good man, a good father." She touched the locket at her throat, a habit she'd developed since Thomas's death. "I'm sorry you lost him," Wade said, and she knew he meant it. "So am I," she replied. But I'm grateful too. Wade raised an eyebrow questioningly. Grateful that Samuel had him, even if it was too briefly, she explained. And grateful that when we needed help the most, you were the one who found us. Their eyes met, and in that moment, something shifted between them. An understanding, perhaps, or a beginning. We should head into town, Wade said, breaking the spell. I want to get into position before Blackwell arrives. The plan called for Wade to enter Molly's through the back, while Abigail met Blackwell face to face. Wade would remain hidden, listening, until Blackwell incriminated himself. Then, either the marshal would make his move, or Wade would. The saloon was crowded when Abigail pushed through the swinging doors at precisely 8 o'clock. Conversations faltered as heads turned to watch her make her way to an empty table in the corner. She was acutely aware of being the only respectable woman in a room full of cowboys, miners, and drifters. She didn't have to wait long. Jack Blackwell entered with a flourish 5 minutes later, flanked by Harkins and another thug. He was a large man, expensively dressed, with a florid face and cold, calculating eyes. He spotted her immediately and made his way over, confidence oozing from every pore. "Mrs. Reynolds," he said, tipping his hat with mock courtesy. "This is quite unexpected. I was beginning to think you'd left our fair town for good. May I speak with you privately, Mr. Blackwell?" Abigail asked, fighting to keep her voice steady. Blackwell laughed, the sound hard and brittle. "After you ran out on our last meeting? I don't think so." He sat down across from her, motioning for his men to remain standing. "Whatever you have to say, you can say it right here." Abigail swallowed hard, acutely aware of the curious eyes watching them from around the saloon. This wasn't part of the plan. Wade would have trouble hearing over the noise of the crowd, and there would be witnesses to whatever happened next. "As you wish," she said, keeping her voice low. "I'm prepared to make a deal. The deed to our land, in exchange for you leaving me and my son alone." Blackwell's eyes narrowed. "That's not much of a deal, Mrs. Reynolds. That deed is rightfully mine anyway. Your husband should have accepted my offer when he had the chance." "Before you murdered him, you mean," Abigail said, unable to keep the bitterness from her voice. "Unfortunate accident," Blackwell replied with a dismissive wave. He reached for his gun. "He was unarmed," Abigail hissed. "You shot him in cold blood." Blackwell leaned forward, his smile vanishing. "Be careful, Mrs. Reynolds. There are no witnesses here who would contradict my version of events, just as there would be none if something were to happen to you." The threat hung in the air between them. Abigail forced herself to stay calm, to remember the plan. "Harkins mentioned you might be interested in information about Wade Xander," she said, changing tactics. That caught Blackwell's attention. His eyes sharpened. "What do you know about Xander?" "I know where he is," Abigail said. "And I know he's been hunting you for 2 years, ever since you killed his brother." "Mad Xander was a cheating dog who got what he deserved," Blackwell snarled, his facade of civility dropping completely. "So you admit you killed him too?" Abigail pressed. Blackwell seemed to realize his mistake. His expression smoothed into a false smile. "Now, I never said that, did I? Tragic incident at a card game. Nothing more." "That's not how Wade sees it," Abigail countered. "He's been tracking you, waiting for the right moment. And now he thinks he has it." "What are you saying?" Blackwell demanded. "I'm saying he's using me to get to you," Abigail lied smoothly. "He found me and Samuel outside town. Promised to help us in exchange for leading you into a trap." Blackwell studied her face, suspicion warring with interest. "And you're telling me this because—" "Because I care more about my son's safety than Wade Xander's revenge," Abigail said. "I want this finished. The deed for our freedom. And I'll tell you where to find Wade." A slow, triumphant smile spread across Blackwell's face. "Well now, that changes things. Where's Xander?" "First, I want your word," Abigail insisted. "Written and witnessed. You'll leave me and Samuel alone. Forever." "Fine," Blackwell said impatiently. "Harkins, get the bartender over here with paper. We'll do this proper-like." As Harkins moved to obey, Abigail caught a glimpse of movement near the back of the saloon. Wade, positioned as planned. Their eyes met briefly, and he gave an almost imperceptible nod. So far, so good. The bartender brought paper and a pencil. Blackwell scrawled a hasty note stating that he relinquished all claims against Abigail Reynolds and her son in exchange for the deed to their property. He signed it with a flourish and pushed it across the table. "There," he said, satisfied. Abigail folded the paper carefully and tucked it into her pocket. "The deed is hidden at my friend Martha's place, outside town, and Wade is planning to ambush you on your way there." Blackwell's eyes gleamed with malice. "Two birds with one stone. I like it." He turned to his men. "Get the horses, and bring extra ammunition. Xander's a tricky one." "You're going now?" Abigail asked, alarm flaring. This wasn't the plan. The marshal wouldn't be in position yet. "No time like the present, Mrs. Reynolds," Blackwell said, rising. "Don't worry. I'll be back for the deed once Xander's dealt with. You just sit tight." As Blackwell and his men headed for the door, Abigail caught Wade's eye again. He motioned urgently for her to follow Blackwell. They would have to improvise. Outside, the night air was cool against Abigail's flushed face. Blackwell and his men were already mounting up, their intentions clear. "Mr. Blackwell," she called, thinking quickly. "I should come with you, to show you where the deed is hidden." Blackwell considered her for a moment, then nodded. "Fine. You can ride with Harkins." Before she could protest, the weaselly man grabbed her around the waist and hauled her up onto his horse. His arm around her was too tight, his breath hot against her neck as they set off. They rode out of town at a gallop, Blackwell leading the way. Abigail's mind raced. They were headed straight for Joseph and Martha's trading post, straight for Samuel. She had to warn Wade, had to stop them somehow. As they rounded a bend in the road, a shot rang out, the sound echoing through the night. Harkins' horse reared, nearly unseating them both. More shots followed, and suddenly Blackwell's other man fell from his saddle, clutching his shoulder. "Ambush!" Blackwell yelled, drawing his pistol. "It's Xander!" Harkins shoved Abigail roughly to the ground, dismounting to use his horse as cover. She scrambled away, her heart pounding as bullets whizzed overhead. In the chaos, she spotted Wade moving through the trees, firing methodically. "Get to cover!" he shouted when he saw her. Abigail crawled toward a fallen log, bullets kicking up dirt around her. She heard Blackwell cursing, heard the thunder of hoofbeats as one of the horses broke free and galloped away. Then, suddenly, silence fell. Abigail peered cautiously over the log. Blackwell's wounded man lay motionless on the ground. Harkins was nowhere to be seen, and Blackwell himself was on his knees in the middle of the road, hands raised, as Wade approached with his rifle aimed squarely at the man's chest. "Jack Blackwell," Wade said, his voice deadly calm. "Been a long time coming." "Xander," Blackwell spat. "Should have known the woman was lying." "She wasn't lying," Wade replied. "This is exactly the trap we planned for you. Only difference is, you sprung it a little early." "You won't kill me in cold blood," Blackwell said, though uncertainty flickered in his eyes. "Not with her watching. You're not that kind of man." "You don't know what kind of man I am," Wade said quietly. "Not after what you did to Matt." Abigail stood slowly, her legs shaky. "Wade," she called. "The marshal isn't coming," Wade finished, never taking his eyes off Blackwell. Not in time, anyway. The implication hung in the air. Wade intended to end this here and now, without waiting for the law. "You do this, you're no better than him," Abigail said, moving closer. "This isn't what we planned." "Plans change," Wade replied, his finger tightening on the trigger. "Please," Abigail said softly. "Not like this. Not for me and Samuel." She touched his arm gently. "You promised him you'd come back. What will I tell him if you hang for murder?" Something shifted in Wade's expression. Conflict, then resignation. With visible effort, he lowered the rifle slightly. "You're lucky, Blackwell," he said. "Luckier than my brother was." Relief flooded Abigail, but it was short-lived. In the moment Wade's attention wavered, Blackwell reached for a hidden pistol in his boot. Abigail saw it happening as if in slow motion. "Wade," she screamed. Wade's reaction was instantaneous. He shoved Abigail aside with one arm while bringing his rifle back up with the other. Two shots rang out almost simultaneously. Blackwell's went wide. Wade's didn't. Blackwell fell backward, a look of surprise frozen on his face. The hidden pistol dropped from his limp fingers. "You all right?" Wade asked, turning to Abigail with concern etched on his features. She nodded numbly, unable to tear her eyes from Blackwell's still form. You had to," she said. "He would have killed you. Both of us." Wade's expression was grim as he checked Blackwell for signs of life. Finding none, he straightened up. "Self-defense," he said. "Clear as day. Even the marshal will see that." As if summoned by his words, they heard horses approaching. Wade positioned himself in front of Abigail, rifle ready, until he recognized the lead rider. "Marshal Parker," he called. "You're late to the party." The marshal, a grizzled man with a stern countenance, surveyed the scene with a practiced eye as he dismounted. "Looks like you started without me, Xander," he said dryly. "That Blackwell." Wade nodded. "He drew first. Mrs. Reynolds is my witness." Marshal Parker looked to Abigail, who nodded confirmation. "He had a hidden pistol," she said. "He would have killed us both." The marshal sighed heavily. "Been trying to pin something on Blackwell for years. Guess this saves the county the cost of a trial." He looked at the body again. "Self-defense is how I'll write it up." "But Xander, next time wait for the law, you hear?" "Yes, sir." Wade agreed, though something in his tone suggested he'd have done the same thing all over again if necessary. In the aftermath, everything seemed to happen in a blur. The marshal's deputies took charge of Blackwell's body and rounded up Harkins, who hadn't gotten far on foot. The wounded man survived to face charges as an accomplice to Blackwell's crimes. Through it all, Wade stayed by Abigail's side, his solid presence grounding her through the questioning, the statements, the inevitable gossip that swept through Silver Creek like wildfire. By the time they finally rode to Joseph's trading post to collect Samuel, dawn was breaking over the mountains. Abigail was exhausted but oddly at peace. For the first time in months, she felt truly safe. Samuel was overjoyed to see them, flinging himself into Abigail's arms with such force that she staggered backward. "You came back," he cried. "Both of you. I promised, didn't I?" Wade said, ruffling the boy's hair. "Man to man. Did you get the bad men?" Samuel asked, looking between them with wide eyes. Abigail and Wade exchanged glances. "Yes," Abigail said simply. "The bad men can't hurt us anymore." After a tearful goodbye to Joseph and Martha, who had taken to Samuel in just one day, they rode back to Wade's cabin. Samuel chattered the whole way, seemingly unaffected by the events that had turned his world upside down. "Can we stay with Wade now?" he asked Abigail as the cabin came into view. "I like it here, and Rusty likes me." "That's up to Wade, sweetheart," Abigail said carefully, conscious of the man riding behind them. Wade was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "I'd like that very much, Samuel. If your ma agrees, you're both welcome to stay as long as you want." Abigail turned to look at him, searching his face for any sign that he was merely being kind. What she saw instead made her breath catch. Hope, longing, and something else she was afraid to name. "We couldn't impose," she began. "It's not an imposition," Wade cut in. "Place gets lonely. And He hesitated, then continued more softly. "I've gotten used to having you both around." That evening, after Samuel had fallen asleep in the small trundle bed Wade had somehow produced and assembled during their absence, Abigail joined Wade on the porch. The night was clear, stars scattered across the sky like diamonds on black velvet. "Thank you," she said. "For everything. For saving us. For bringing Blackwell to justice." Wade shook his head. "Don't need thanks for doing what's right." "Even so," Abigail insisted, "you've given Samuel and me a second chance. A future without fear." "What will you do now?" Wade asked, his voice carefully neutral. "Go back to your land." Abigail considered the question. The land held memories of Thomas, of the life they'd built together. But it also held pain. "I don't think so," she said finally. "Too many ghosts there. Samuel and we need a fresh start." Wade nodded slowly. "My offer stands. You're welcome here. For as long as you want." "And if that's a very long time?" Abigail asked, her heart beating faster. Wade turned to look at her, his eyes serious in the moonlight. "Then I'd be a very lucky man," he said simply. Abigail took a deep breath. "Wade, I need to be honest with you. I love Thomas. Part of me always will. But these past few days..." She struggled to find the words. "You've come to mean a great deal to both of us." "To me." Wade reached out, taking her hand in his. "I know about loving ghosts, Abigail. I've done my share of it. But I also know that the heart has room for new beginnings." "Is that what this is?" she asked softly. "A new beginning?" Instead of answering, Wade gently pulled her to her feet. His hand came up to cup her cheek, his touch achingly tender. "If you wanted to be," he murmured. When his lips met hers, Abigail felt something she hadn't felt in a very long time: hope. The kiss was gentle, questioning, allowing her space to pull away if she wished. Instead, she leaned into it, her hands finding their way to his shoulders. When they finally parted, Wade pressed his forehead to hers, his breathing uneven. "I've wanted to do that since I found you on that road," he admitted. Abigail smiled, her heart lighter than it had been in months. "I'm glad you waited until I wasn't covered in dust," she teased. Wade laughed, the sound warming her from within. "You were beautiful then too," he said. "Strong, fierce, protecting your son with everything you had." "We've come a long way since that day," Abigail said, thinking of how close they'd come to never having this moment. "And we've got a long way still to go," Wade replied. "Together, if you'll have me." "Together," Abigail agreed, sealing the promise with another kiss. For months later, as summer faded into autumn, Abigail stood in the doorway of what was now their cabin, watching as Wade taught Samuel to ride his very own pony, a birthday gift that had reduced the boy to speechless wonder. "Not too fast," she called, though she knew Wade would never let any harm come to Samuel. In the months they'd been living together, Wade had become the father Samuel needed, patient and kind but firm when necessary. "He's doing fine," Wade called back, his hand steady on the pony's bridle as Samuel bounced excitedly in the small saddle. "A natural, just like his mother." Abigail smiled, her hand absently touching the simple gold band on her left finger, not Thomas's ring, which she now kept in her locket, but a new one Wade had placed there just 2 weeks ago in a small ceremony attended by Joseph, Martha, and a few friends from Silver Creek. The deed to Thomas's land had been sold, the money set aside for Samuel's future. In its place, Wade had purchased the land surrounding their cabin, with plans to build a proper ranch come spring. Already, a small herd of cattle grazed in the valley below, the beginning of what Wade promised would someday be a legacy for Samuel. Life wasn't perfect. There were still nights when Abigail woke from nightmares about Blackwell, days when she missed Thomas with an ache that felt fresh, moments when Wade grew quiet, lost in memories of his brother or the war. But there was also joy. Samuel's laughter as he played with the puppies born to Wade's old hunting dog, the warmth of Wade's arms around her in the night, the sense of family they were building, day by day, choice by choice. As she watched Wade lift Samuel from the pony, swinging the boy high in the air to delighted squeals, Abigail felt a profound gratitude wash over her for the strange twist of fate that had left her and Samuel sleeping in the dust that day, for the cowboy who had lifted them both onto his horse, for second chances and new beginnings. "Mama, did you see?" Samuel called, running toward her with Wade following more slowly behind. "I rode all by myself. I saw," Abigail assured him, ruffling his hair. "You were very brave." "Just like Pa," Samuel said proudly, and Abigail's breath caught at the ease with which he now called Wade Pa. Wade came up beside them, his arms slipping naturally around Abigail's waist. "Just like your ma," he corrected gently. "She's the bravest person I know." Samuel considered this seriously, then nodded. "Can we have pancakes for supper?" he asked, the momentous question of bravery apparently settled in his mind. Abigail laughed. "I suppose we could," she agreed. "Go wash up, and you can help mix the batter." As Samuel darted inside, Wade pulled Abigail closer, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Happy?" he asked. Abigail looked up at him, at the love shining in his eyes, and knew there was only one possible answer. "Yes," she said simply. "More than I ever thought I could be again." Later that night, with Samuel asleep and the cabin quiet except for the crackling of the fire, Abigail sat beside Wade on the porch, wrapped in a blanket against the autumn chill. The stars seemed especially bright, the mountains a dark silhouette against the night sky. "I've been thinking," Wade said, breaking the comfortable silence between them. Abigail murmured, content in the circle of his arm. "Samuel needs siblings," he said, his voice casual though she could feel the slight tension in his body. "A brother or sister to grow up with, to share this place with someday." Abigail's heart skipped a beat. They'd discussed children, in the abstract way of newlyweds still finding their way together. But hearing Wade speak the desire aloud made it suddenly, wonderfully real. "I think you're right," she said, turning to face him. This place would be perfect for a big family. The smile that spread across Wade's face was like sunrise breaking over the mountains. Yeah, yeah, she confirmed, rising to her feet and holding out her hand to him. In fact, I think we should start working on that right away. Wade stood, gathering her close. Mrs. Xander, he murmured against her lips. I do believe that's the best idea I've heard all day. As he swept her into his arms and carried her into their cabin, Abigail reflected on the journey that had brought them here. From desperation to hope. From loss to love. From two broken people to a family being made whole. Her son had slept beside her in the dust until the cowboy lifted them both onto his horse. And in that simple act of kindness, their futures had been forever changed. Winter gave way to spring, spring to summer, and with the changing seasons came the changes in their lives. The ranch grew, as did their family. By the time Samuel was 10, he had two younger siblings, a sister named Elizabeth, with her mother's auburn hair and her father's blue eyes, and a baby brother called Matthew, for the uncle he would never meet, but whose legacy lived on in Wade's stories. Silver Creek prospered in the years after Blackwell's death, the town growing as honest folk felt safe to settle there once more. Abigail and Wade made the journey and occasionally for supplies and to visit friends, but more often their friends came to them, drawn by the warmth of their home and the beauty of the mountains. There were hard times too, the winter blizzard that nearly took their herd, the fever that left Samuel weak for months, the occasional nightmares that still haunted both Abigail and Wade. But they weathered each storm together, their bond only strengthening with each challenge overcome. And on quiet evenings, when the children were asleep and the day's work was done, Abigail would sometimes find Wade standing on the porch, looking out at the land they had built together. She would slip her arms around him from behind, resting her cheek against his back, and feel his deep sigh of contentment. "Did you ever imagine this?" she would ask. "When you found us that day?" And Wade would turn, gathering her close, his face solemn, but his eyes filled with a joy that needed no words. "Not even in my wildest dreams," he would admit. "But I thank God every day that I was riding that road at that moment. It wasn't the life either of them had planned. It was better, richer, fuller, more blessed than they could have imagined. Built on loss, yes, but transformed by love into something beautiful and enduring." And it all began with a woman and her son sleeping in the dust, and the cowboy who lifted them both onto his horse and into a future bright with promise.